In this segment, we explore the medical realities of the Korean War, a conflict often overshadowed by World War II, but marked by brutal conditions, rapid medical innovation, and the resilience of frontline surgical teams. I'll be asking questions to Jen Williams, the founder of Kidney Contenders, as we examine how battlefield environments shaped medical response and why these lessons still matter today. Jen, can you describe the battlefield conditions during the Korean War and how they shaped the experiences of soldiers and medics?
So the Korean War began in 1950 when North Korean forces crossed the 38th parallel and invaded South Korea, pulling the United States and the United Nations forces into a brutal conflict on the Korean Peninsula. U.S. soldiers fought across harsh, mountainous terrain and extreme sub zero temperatures from the Pusan Perimeter in the south to the frozen Chosin Reservoir in the north. So the battlefield was unlike anything American forces had seen in World War II, and they saw a lot in World War II. With the sudden ambushes, close quarters engagements, and relentless artillery fire shaping every single movement. So these conditions demanded a new approach to battlefield medicine, one that could respond quickly, adapt to the terrain, and bring surgical care closer to the front lines. This is where the Mobile Army Surgical Hospitals, better known as the MASH units, and helicopter evacuation first transformed combat survival. The Korean War became the turning point where American battlefield medicine began to look truly modern.
How were surgical teams able to deliver life-saving care during the Korean War despite the extreme conditions and constant movement of the front lines?
Surgical care during the Korean War changed dramatically as U.S. medical teams as they brought advanced trauma surgery closer to the front lines than they had ever done before. So fighting stretched from rugged hills near Busan in the south to the icy highlands around Chosin Reservoir. And that was where rapid surgical intervention often determined whether a wounded soldier lived or died. So we also had, that was very important, the introduction of helicopter evaluation. And that allowed casualties from battles near Incheon and Wonju to reach surgeons in minutes instead of hours. Inside the Mobile Army Surgical Hospitals, referred to as MASH units, teams performed complex procedures such as vascular repair, chest wound stabilization, abdominal trauma surgery, and that was done under relentless pressure. Then you had extreme cold in regions like Hamhung and Hangang Ruri, which created kind of additional medical challenges. They really did force surgeons to treat frostbite, frozen tissue injuries, hypothermia, and that was alongside gunshot and shrapnel wounds. With the battlefield medicine, you notice that you're always going to have the shrapnel wounds. You're always going to have the gunshot wounds. And so the Korean War became the moment when battlefield surgery evolved from distant hospital care to fast, mobile, frontline intervention. And that is the foundation of modern combat medicine.
Jen, how did Korea's harsh terrain and extreme climate influence combat operations and the medical response during the war?
So the Korean Peninsula, and yes, it is a peninsula. It sits in the northern hemisphere. So it sits in the northern hemisphere. It extends southward from the mainland Asia. So from mainland Asia between China and Japan. And its geography pretty much shaped every movement of the Korean War. So you had the US and UN forces that fought across jagged mountain ranges near Chosin Reservoir and then through narrow valleys around Wonju, where they had steep slopes and limited visibility, and that made combat very unpredictable and exhausting. In the south, the defense of the Busan perimeter unfolded across rolling hills, rice paddies, and coastal lowlands, and that turned into deep mud during during Korea's heavy monsoon rains. Now, farther north, battles near Hamhung and Hanganruri they took place in brutal sub zero temperatures. You had icy ridges and frozen grounds, and that slowed movement. And that also made evacuation extremely dangerous. Rivers such as the Nakdong, they kind of created natural defensive barriers, but they also forced troops into exposed crossings under enemy fire. And so the Korean War's terrain, you had mountains, rivers, frozen passes, and tight valleys. They became one of the most decisive factors in how soldiers fought, how they survived, and also how they received medical care.
Jen, how do the death tolls of the Civil War, World War I, and World War II compare? And why is understanding these differences essential to appreciating the evolution of battlefield medicine?
The Korean War claimed over 36,000 American lives, which is still a staggering toll that followed the immense losses of earlier conflicts. So during the Civil War, you had more than 620,000 soldiers that died. And so that, of course, makes it the deadliest war in American history. In World War I, the United States lost over 116,000 service members. Many of them died to trench warfare, artillery, and, of course, influenza. World War II brought even greater sacrifice with more than 405,000 American deaths across Europe, Africa, and the Pacific. So, though smaller in scale than these global conflicts, the Korean War's brutal terrain, the freezing temperatures, the relentless combat, it made it one of the most punishing battlefields American soldiers ever faced. One of the most punishing battlefields American soldiers ever faced. And it is vital that we revisit this history because there's always a lot of talk back and forth about remembering the sacrifices of servicemen and women, and why do we do it? Well, we do it because we want to ensure that those who served are never forgotten. And that is primarily why Battlefield Medicine USA is such a important contribution, especially this year being the 250th birthday for the United States of America.